O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which is just composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All of the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Okay. So we had yesterday discussed the last two sutras, last two shlokas of chapter 4, the Yoga of Wisdom. So traditionally this. Thus, in the Upanishad of the glorious Bhagavad Gita, the science of the eternal, the scripture of yoga, the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna ends the fourth discourse entitled The Yoga of Wisdom. So this morning we began we continue the discussion, of course. What is beginning but continuing? How can you start something without starting it from where you are? So we continue this morning with the yoga of renunciation, sannyasa yoga. Okay, so after this discussion, Arjuna has a question. We had previewed that yesterday morning. Arjuna has a question. Because what? What has the Lord been talking about to this point? You can name anything. What has the Lord been talking about to this point?
Karma yoga.
Karma yoga, action.
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 Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Death of the ego.
Sorry?
Death of the ego.
Death of the ego. Oh.
He's not the doer.
That he's not the doer. That's correct. That's speaking of the inner Krishna. Which is the inner I. Okay, very good. What else?
That we must act.
That we must act. What else? We're missing a key point.
Knowledge.
Okay, very good. That's one of them. Knowledge.
Yeah, like in the second chapter.
Very good. And what else?
Wisdom.
Yes, wisdom.
Gaining wisdom.
Wisdom. What else? Renunciation. It's this thing about renunciation that we're always dealing with.
The fruits.
Right? Arjuna said, you seem to be advising both renunciation of action and the performance of action. Is one better than the other? Do we understand the question? You seem to be telling me both to renounce action. What does it mean to renounce action?
The fruits.
The fruits.
What does it mean to renounce action? If you're renouncing action, you're doing what?
You're
making a
renouncing
decision.
Action.
You're renouncing action. You're not doing.
Right.
So, how many of you, when you experience pain doing a thing, want to stop it?
Yeah.
And the will comes.
Yeah. So that was where we started in chapter 1.
Yes.
With Arjuna, right? He threw down the bow because what?
Yeah.
I'm renouncing this action. I'm not doing it. He even said, right? I'm not doing this. How many have experienced this? Okay, thank you. But the Lord has actually been saying, but that's not it.
Must act.
You have to act in order to be actionless, right? Okay. But still, there are subtleties in that are very difficult, and so we continue on it. But also in the scriptures, we will see verses that say at some point you stop doing. So Arjuna might have seen or heard of one or two of those. So he says, you seem to be advising both renunciation of action and the performance of action. Is one better than the other? So have you noticed a trend that when Arjuna asks the question, what happens next?
It's an answer.
Yeah.
The Lord answers. This is very important for us to remember.
You ask and you receive.
Ask and ye shall receive, yes. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Sri Krishna said, both paths lead to freedom. Of the two, karma yoga, selfless action, is better. True sannyasis, renunciates, neither hate nor desire, and then there's this added, anything just for themselves. True sannyasis, renunciates, neither hate nor desire. Neither hate nor desire. And then this added comment, anything just for themselves. We can read it this way. True sannyasis or true renunciates neither hate nor desire anything just for themselves. Freedom from such dualities of mind brings liberation, Arjuna. We'll come back to this. We're just reading. We'll cover these first 6 sutras this morning, or shlokas this morning. Unlike the wise, those with childish attitudes try to distinguish between the paths of wisdom, jnana yoga, and selfless actions, karma yoga. Whoever becomes well established on either path receives the fruits of both. Both jnana yogis and karma yogis experience the same heightened states of, this is still Lord Krishna, we haven't entered any commentary. So this is Chap.5 of the chapter. Both jnana yogis, jnana yogi is knowledge. When pursuing the path of knowledge, highest knowledge, of course. Right? Okay. And karma yogis experience the same heightened states of consciousness. This is what the Lord is sharing. Experience the same. They see clearly who see jnana yoga and karma yoga as one and the same. The state of true renunciation is hard to reach, Arjuna, without karma yoga, the performance of selfless actions which purify the mind. Anyone who meditates regularly with a mind made pure by karma yoga soon realizes God. So he's answering the question, and we'll take some of the commentary. There's some beautiful commentary from Swami Venkatesananda. So there's a recurring theme here. Again, he's saying that knowledge of self, capital S self, is what is to be gained. But that karma yoga, selfless action, is the purifier that aids this or facilitates this.
Yes.
And it could be said that really all that's needed is to know oneself. All that's needed is to know oneself. We were talking yesterday, and we had this beautiful laugh after the satsang, but we were talking about the dream character. Swami Chinmayananda had made some comment about when the dream character awakens. So what does that mean? Better way to say, when you wake up from the dream, you did something in the dream, or the dream character did something in the dream, really, right? And now that you're awake, should you be punished for what the dream character did? And the answer we came to finally is no, of course not, because the waking character and the dream character are not the same.
The actor and the self.
Oh. So knowledge of self is all that's actually required. If you just know that you are not this dream character, that's all that's needed. But in order to gain this knowledge, this is what the Lord is speaking of. Okay. So here, the first three shlokas, Arjuna said, renunciation of all actions. You praise and again yoga. Tell me conclusively which is the better of the two. The Lord said, renunciation and the yoga of action both lead to the highest bliss. Renunciation of action and karma yoga both lead to the highest bliss. But of the two, karma yoga is superior to the renunciation of action. So it's the same point that's being made, but more clarity on it.
Can you, Swamiji, maybe explain what's the difference between them?
Yeah, you stop doing.
But they sound like they're both the same. Renunciation of action is just renunciation of the fruits of action, but you're still acting, and the other one is selfless action, so it's the same.
No. If you stop doing, I refuse to move, I'm going to sit in a cave. That could be said to be renunciation of action. Renouncing action, I will not act.
Oh, okay, not renouncing.
Not that's as opposed to renunciation of the fruits in karma yoga.
So the context is different when he's saying here.
Yeah, so he's come back to the same question that
Right.
Arjuna had asked 2 chapters ago. Arjuna is asking the same question again.
That's not even a path, basically. It's just...
Well, so there are it's a path. It's a path. And the path is extolled by some.
Okay.
It's a path.
Okay.
It's a path. And the path is extolled by some. And the path is spoken of in the Upanishads as well. So Ramana Maharshi could be said to extol the path.
Okay.
Just observe oneself, just know oneself. Huh? So it's a path. And Arjuna comes to this knowing that it's a path. So still he's saying, if you go back to chapter 2, you said, all I need to know is myself. All I need to do is know myself, which we would hear certainly from Ramana Maharshi, certainly we'll hear it from Nisargadatta, we'll hear it from many of the great sages. And it's true. It's actually true. It's completely true. All that's needed is to know oneself. Which leads to a path of renunciation of action and meditation, study, jnana yoga. Jnana yoga. So, and as we go on, the apparent dissonance will be resolved. The apparent discord will be resolved. But just to come back to, we've just come out of the chapter where the Lord is praising, 2 chapters, where the Lord is praising karma yoga, right? Selfless action, and saying the real renunciation, the highest renunciation is the renunciation of the fruit.
Right.
But really the highest renunciation is the renunciation of the lie. Really, the highest renunciation is the renunciation of I, me, mine. I, me, mine. Renunciation of the ego. And that's been discussed as well, right? So, and what he's been extolling is that karma yoga leads one towards renunciation of the I, me, mine, of the ego. Okay. You had a question? And
I was trying to understand from the previous chapter, it was mentioned that action still is actionless. Like sitting in the cave, just sitting on it still is an action. Like the rock that is not moving, that is.
Some will say, and this is not wrong, some will say that the most beneficial action, the highest duty, is non-action. So, and that's where the point of confusion will come. What does that mean? So, and Lord Krishna hasn't said that it's not a path. He hasn't said that. But he's also saying, but I'm telling you that to reach that state, the most practical approach is karma yoga. And he's explaining why. To reach the state of actionlessness, the most practical approach is karma yoga. He's still saying this. But Arjuna still had a doubt. That's where we started. So now he's addressing the doubt. And the doubt will come, by the way. Even the practiced yogi who has not yet integrated, who has not yet come to that selfless or self, capital S, place, that highest state of consciousness, will have the experience of bliss, will want to drop all of the actions and all of the duties. But okay, we'll stop there. We'll continue with the commentary. I mean, it happens. And then the question is what to do. And here the question is being answered, and it's being answered. Let's just continue with it, and then see what question remains. We'll pick up the commentary here on these first three and the next two, and then continue the discussion. But this is the question. It really was a question. So I'm still hearing renunciation from you, Lord Krishna. Which is better, renouncing actions or performing action in a selfless way? I want to hear from you conclusively, which is better. And Lord Krishna answers, and he says, either one will take you to the goal. Although he hasn't been talking so much about the first, he did, and he does also, because he says wisdom is the highest. Wisdom is the highest. And even karma yoga is being performed in order to unwrap the veil, in order to take the veils off. For what purpose? What's the fruit? Wisdom. Wisdom, yeah. It's the only fruit that solves anything. To unveil one's intuitive self, which is not a separate self, which is not a separate place. It's the highest consciousness. Okay. So Swamiji says, the confusion arose over a misunderstanding of verse 41 of the previous chapter. This confusion that we're talking about. He says it arose over a misunderstanding of verse 41 of the previous chapter. The word samnyasa meant and even means now to the narrow-minded orthodox bigot, is a word he adds. Giving up of all activities and enjoyments. So samnyasa, that word samnyasa, renunciation, I don't know if we remember, there were two words used for renunciation, samnyasa and tyaga. Tyaga. And they have different meanings, but they both mean renunciation. Sannyasa means renunciation of action. So I'm a sannyasin. So that means one who's renounced action. Really? And to tell you the truth, I don't meet many sannyasis who have actually renounced action. I'm not convinced that they exist. But they exist. The tyagi exists, but the capital Y yogi exists also. The one who's in that highest state, and so. And by the way, I've met have met this. I'm laughing about it, but I have met. So when I was in India the last time, so 4 years ago, whatever that was, I met a sannyasa, I met a Swami. He was a guest of Swami Ramaswarupanandaji's. And bigot is not a word I would have actually chosen, but it resonates. So here was the Swami. So we came together for mealtime, and this is very traditional. We came together at mealtime, and the meals were being offered. And Swamiji had his assistant. We just call her Mataji. So she had come in service of Swamiji. Swamiji had some physical ailments and such, and so she had come in service of Swamiji, and she'd get frustrated with him and she'd leave. And I only was able to go back twice after the pilgrimage, but still, even while I was there on those two relatively short visits, she would come and go. She'd get frustrated with him and then leave, and then come back. So she was there this day, and so she was the one serving the meals, and this Swami absolutely refused to take the meal from her because a Brahmin is not served by a woman. Now that's in the text somewhere, but of course it's terribly misunderstood. And here's an example of it. And he had such anger about it. And then the tradition is to purify this is a Brahmin tradition. The tradition is to purify by chanting Gayatri mantra 3 times, like that. So he was doing this, and someone started to say the prayer, and he stopped. And there was such anger in it, such anger in it. So his view is he's a renunciate.
Wow. He's full of anger.
But actually, from standing back, one can say, no, he hasn't renounced a thing. He's refusing to act in a certain way according to what's prescribed, etc. But he's also angry, so angry, and that anger he was fuming, so upset, and you could see during the rest of the day, just carrying that anger about how he'd been disrespected and all of this. So
it's almost like the sannyasa then fueled the ego rather than the opposite direction.
That's exactly why Lord Krishna is teaching what he's teaching.
Oh no.
Right. Because I won't act. There's nothing you can do to make me act. So enjoyment was supposed to cause attachment, and action provided the fuel to keep the wheel of karma revolving. To talk of samyasa and activity in the same breath was obviously a contradiction in their eyes. So there is that school. He's in that school. So it says, renounce all of action, because action is fraught with temptation and sense objects going out. So that's that very austere approach. So to talk of renunciation and activity in the same breath was obviously a contradiction in their eyes. The famous story of Queen Chudala in the Yoga Vasishta brings out the kernel of renunciation graphically. Renunciation should be of that which is mine. Worldly objects belong to the world. Renouncing them would be like the beggar in South India renouncing his claims to the throne of England. They do not exist. Attachment to worldly activities may be replaced by attachment to so-called spiritual activities. So he's not prescribing, but the attachment to worldly activities for one that comes into spiritual path can very easily become attachment to spiritual activities. And if you say to that person, come, we have guests, please serve, they say, no, I'm doing my sadhana right now. Or they think it. Or they think it. Or they think it. Yeah, you see?
I don't have time to do my charm yoga. I need to.
Oh. With no real spiritual benefit. If a king enjoys his cup of wine, a mendicant might sip a cup of milk with equal pleasure. Patanjali warns us that even the bliss of Savikalpa Samadhi is an extremely subtle substitute for sense pleasure. Does that make sense? Yeah. So real renunciation is abandonment of egoistic acceptance and rejection, love and hatred, likes and dislikes. Real renunciation is renunciation of the only thing that belongs to me. And the only thing that belongs to me is ignorance. The foolish ideas of I in relation to the body and mine in relation to the objects of the world. So real renunciation is just renouncing ignorance. Longing and aversion both spring from false values. By giving both up, one is freed from their bondage while remaining active. And then a little more commentary of these next two sutras. Children, not the wise, speak of knowledge and the yoga of action as though they are distinct and different. He who is truly established in one obtains the fruits of both. That place which is reached by the ones of knowledge is reached by the yogi. He perceives aright who has understood that knowledge and action are one. So, Swamiji adds, why does man renounce objects of sense enjoyments? When a scorpion falls in your lap, why do you throw it away? Because you fear it will sting you. The sting will give you pain and take away happiness, sense pleasure, which you wish to enjoy. You value that pleasure and you credit the scorpion with the power to take it away. Similarly, in the case of other objects, you superimpose on them a certain exaggerated value in relation to your own egoistic pleasure instinct. So long as this valuation lasts, even their renunciation is of no value. It's not right? As long as that reaction is there, even if it's not being expressed, it's still there. Right? So, fine, you stop having coffee, but is the coffee vritti still here?
For a while, probably.
So, as long as it remains, you're not really free.
Yeah.
So long as this valuation lasts, even their renunciation is of no value. For the renunciation of pleasure is motivated by the desire for pleasure. The renunciation of pleasure is motivated by the desire for pleasure. Euphemistically called supreme bliss or heaven. Knowledge deflates this value. In the light of knowledge, the man of wisdom perceives the whole universe, of which his body and mind are parts, as the body of God, with the countless beings doing their duty as cells in it. Likewise, such a man's body and mind obey his will, unfettered by his self-arrogating ego. Being established in this knowledge, he finds that the only factor to be renounced is ignorance, ego. And its private reactions, which are likes and dislikes, even this is not renunciation, as the ego as an independent entity is non-existent. So he just states a fact that we miss, that ego also is not a thing in and of itself.
It's a desire.
Right, it's a concept. Yeah.
It's a
It's a concept.
Ego's a concept that we're dealing with for an aspect of the reality.
Ownership.
An aspect of the reality. And of course, it's an aspect of the reality. Of course, it's universal because it's a factor with every single being. It's a factor. Likewise, such a man's body and will obey his will, unfettered by the self-arrogating ego. As an independent entity is non-existent, knowledge enables one to realize the unreal as unreal. God rules the wise man's body and mind, which functions according to his will. It cannot be otherwise. Knowledge of God gives knowledge of his will, and his will is done by the yogi spontaneously. Knowledge and action are two sides of the same coin. To be established well in one is to practice both. So the karma yogi who's completely dedicated to the practice of selfless action, but not for the sake of doing, right? Selfless action, the action being that which is beneficial, that which is according to duty, to one's duty. Non-desirous of fruit, and engaging irregardless of like, dislike. Right? So that's the karma yogi. Then attains to that stainless state, which is the unwrapping of the wisdom. Right? So the wisdom shines, the light shines. And so too the jnani, who knows the self, is no longer a barrier to God's will. And so it's God's will that's acting here. So the same beneficial action is performed. So you can't actually, from the outside, you could never tell the difference. And interestingly, from the inside, you couldn't tell the difference. Because in both cases, the ego is out of the way. Right? Oh, comments, questions?
Takes time.
Yeah, it doesn't take time, but it takes the resolve, it takes the commitment, it takes the determination, and then time.
Non-existent.
Yeah, then we can say it takes time to play out like that.
Right.
The karma needs to unravel.
Something like that.
Okay.
Something like that. Grace shines. Grace shines.
Before I had a question, if karma yoga was better than meditation, non-action.
Better than
Meditation,
meditation.
But then, in the last sentence was probably both.
Yeah. So meditation, you see, it's meditation practice for us. It's not actually meditation. We call it meditation. Let's sit for meditation. But it's a practice. And not really meditation. No doubt we have, to a greater or lesser extent, some experience of meditation in sitting and practicing meditation. Generally speaking, the mind will go on and but then some experience of so the way we see karma yoga as a purifier related to the practice of meditation is that the more the little self, the false self is we could say transformed, but we can also say the less the little self is a factor for you, the better the meditation, the practice of meditation is, better, quote unquote. The more experience of meditation you have when seated.
Is it?
So that's the way the purification plays out. Again, what's the object? The object is to remove myself from a false idea, which is called ego. To withdraw myself from the false idea, to not any longer. And the process of doing that, there's a process of doing that, of which karma yoga is being extolled.
Does it make it easier to observe the ego when we practice? No?
Yes, it does. It does. In a way, the ego is not hard to observe at all. The feeling of being separate is ego, so you're always observing it as the thing. You're always seeing it. But you take yourself to be it. And that's the thing.
What's it?
Mataji has a... Yes.
I'm finding being here and observing the ego, that death and renunciation is a moment-to-moment thing, and that the ego wants to continue living, and that it tends to become solid in its position.
Right.
And I find that just being willing to move off a position, like for example, looking at someone and seeing them in a certain way,
Right.
brings up negativity.
Yeah.
If I'm able to move off that position, then that's a kind of dying in the moment. It's kind of renunciation in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a way, you could say that ego is an object, not different than this wall over here. It's an object, not really different. It's an idea, but it's not you. It's an idea. Being an idea, it's an object to the eye. So the fact that you observe it helps you to see that it's an object. It's an idea. It's not me. It's an idea. Lots of different ideas come, none of which are you. It's an idea. Like the wall, it's an idea. I mean, it's an object. So recognizing that that idea is not me, and then living according to this realization.
What I'd like to share is that observing this situation with another person, I'm finding that this is a longer stay for me, and so things are more being triggered more.
Yes.
So,
Yes, it happens.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so there's this, in the TV series The West Wing, there's a situation where the president's staff is stranded in Iowa. They missed their ride, and they're playing this game at a gas station, and the person that loses, when they say what their name is, they have to say, "I work at the White House." And so what came to me, I guess through Mother's grace, was every time I saw this person that was triggering me, I was going to do this.
Yes.
I completely changed the whole, just released that whole thought projection.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah.
Just changed everything.
Yes.
So every time I saw them, I would do this.
And what you've observed is that this is an option.
That's
And this is nididhyasana.
yeah.
It's practicing the truth, practice of the truth, which is I and thee are one. Hari, you had something to add as well.
I wanted to say about because I also used to be very confused of why the karma yoga would improve the meditation or how they go together.
Yes.
And then I realized that it's basically the karma yoga shrinking the ego.
Yeah.
Because you cannot really meditate with a big ego.
Oh.
Because otherwise you're just getting into deep meditation and it's like, oh yes, I'm achieving this, I'm making it. And then you lost it, you lose it right away.
Yes, it's gone.
So true.
Yes,
So the
indeed.
moment you think that it's gone.
I'm a great meditator. That idea will come.
Yeah, been there. For sure.
Yes,
So
thank you.
ego and meditation cannot go together.
You cannot go together.
No.
Cannot. And actually, meditation is the absence of self, little s self.
Yeah.
You could define it that way. Whenever the little self is gone, meditation.
Yeah. Waking meditation throughout the day.
Yeah, no, I mean, meditation is not. Again, we have a practice of meditation on the mat. But that's Raja Yoga. But what the Raja Yogan experiences in those moments of actually breaking through and being free of the little self, the Karma Yogan experiences too. And then the Jnana Yogan experiences as well. This is that.
Yeah.
Here today, this morning, Lord Krishna says, either experience that same highest consciousness. Oh. So, okay. Om Mataji, yes.
Karma yoga is better than meditation because Lord wants us to use the karmendriyas, the hands, the legs,
Yes,
have
yes.
to be used.
Yes,
And that is why karma yoga is better than meditation.
yes. Om. Om. And in fact, it is meditation.
Yes.
In terms of practices, it is meditation practice, isn't it, Mataji? Oh, it's actually a much more effective meditation practice.
The karmendriyas must be used.
Oh.
It's a lot longer.
Oh. Okay, thank you, Mataji. Okay, let's close with final prayers and arati. Page 174. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvairukhameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvairukhameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivardhanam Orvairukhameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Makashi Dukhabhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mritor Ma Mritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. On below Sadhguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki. Jai. And and for all of the saints and sages of all traditions.
Jai.
Let's rise for our